So February 27, we're going to start this meeting or these interview of these candidates. We are today interviewing 5 candidates to fill the role of 2 open positions of captain within the Holyoke Police Department. And just so that folks at home know that are observing, and the candidate that's in front of us, our first candidate, Mr. Charles Monfett, know and understand that civil service dictates these promotions. The candidates that we're interviewing today have taken the civil service test and have had their scoring, and so the interview is going to be determined within the order of that scoring. And communities that are civil service communities have to promote within the order of that scoring, unless there's a reason to bypass a candidate. And if there is a reason to bypass a candidate in civil service, there's eligible reasons on why you can or can bypass a candidate, then in that case, we would go to the next candidate for a particular, to fill in any particular open spots. And if there isn't, we have to appoint within the order of the scoring of the civil service. But with that being said, usually, here in Holyoke, the mayor is the appointing authority of everyone within the police department, as well as the promotions. But even though that might be the case, just like we did this last time with the last list when we were doing promotions, I like to be transparent and open as much as possible so that folks understand the process. Most importantly for me, people at home get to know the candidates that we're looking to put into these leadership roles, these critical leadership roles within the police department. And then also offer an opportunity for candidates to, really introduce themselves and kind of help set the tone and the expectation of what we want to see within the police department overall. In this case, we're putting people into 2 high-ranking positions. These are right-hand folks of the police chief overseeing the day-to-day and different shifts of the police department. And, this is an incredible opportunity to set a positive tone, a positive direction of candidates that we want, what we want to see out of these candidates when they assume these roles, and also making sure that the public is holding us accountable to that. But what we're going to do, Charles, you're the first candidate. We're going to ask you a series of questions. I have here my personnel director, Kelly Curran. You know this guy, right?
Hello.
Police chief. And we have members of our Citizens Advisory Police Relations Committee who have been meeting regularly since even before I assumed office, every month for the last 2+ years. And then we have new members. So to my left, we have Colleen Chesmore, Axel Fontanes, retired police captain Fletcher, and Kalana. And we also have people, this is being, not to put any pressure, there are folks from home watching, or wherever they're watching, streamlining it, and it's also being broadcast in our local public access channel, Channel 15. But before we dive in, you're comfortable? Any questions for us before we get started?
Yeah, I'm just excited for the opportunity to be here to interview for this position. Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck. Chief?
I'm going to start with just a brief introduction of the candidate. This is Lieutenant Charles Monfett. He started with the police department in 2009 as a reserve officer. He became a full-time police officer in 2011. He spent his time in patrol. He was promoted to sergeant in 2013, and he was promoted to lieutenant in 2020. He is currently a day shift commanding officer in patrol. He has a letter of appreciation, a letter of recognition in his file, and he holds dual master's degrees in criminal justice and public administration. He's attended the FBI Lead Supervisor Command Leadership course, and he was also a first aid CPR instructor during his time, and he's been an instructor for police survival, also animal cruelty investigations, and He's been in charge of our breath test instruments as the commanding officer of that.
Chief, is, I'm assuming nothing in his file, nothing as far as his reputation, the police department?
No.
Okay.
Ready to start? Questions? Awesome. Charles, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and what qualifications or experience you have that will make you successful in this position?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. I'm a lifelong resident of Holyoke. I graduated from Holyoke High in 2002. I then pursued a career in law enforcement by enrolling in the criminal justice program at Westfield State.
Westfield State?
While at Westfield, I also worked 6 years with the Holyoke Medical Center Security Department, when in 2009, I had the opportunity of being hired as a reserve officer with the department, and I served in that capacity for just shy of 2 years, when in 2011, I was able to be hired full-time with the department after graduating the Springfield Police Academy, where I was class treasurer, and I was also received highest academics upon graduation. Educationally, in addition to my undergrad in criminal justice, I also have a master's of criminal justice with an advanced certificate in homeland security, as well as a master of public administration with a concentration in public management. These degrees have really allowed me to understand the guardian role that police have in our community, as well as the long-term implications that the decisions we make have on people's lives. I've also come to appreciate the holistic nature of policing, and I understand that collaboration and cooperation are really paramount concerns that need to be ingrained in the operational mindset of decision makers. So when I began my career, I learned all that I could by studying the standard operating procedures. I gained institutional knowledge from senior members of the department. And I really took a proactive and community-focused approach to implementing the laws of the Commonwealth, which I found led to favorable results based on the feedback that I was receiving as well as the results that I was generating. This really inspired me to seek a promotion to sergeant. And in 2013, I was promoted to sergeant, where I was now able to coach and mentor new officers in the department, as well as provide supervisory oversight and support to more senior members of the department. As the chief had mentioned, I was also proud to have received a letter of commendation for the way I was responding in my supervisory capacity. Fast forward to 2020, I was promoted to lieutenant. In addition to the supervisory requirements that I had done up to that point as a sergeant, this was now coupled with more of the management functions of policing, such as planning, organizing, staffing, and coordinating. This really allowed me to think long-term as far as police strategies, putting officers where they're best suited to make a positive impact in their policing on members of the community, as well as budget, overtime concerns, FMLA, things of that nature. I was also able to still have the upward and downward communication, but now there was more of a focus on the lateral communication between bureau commanders, but now with a higher number of individuals in the department. And this really allowed me to drive home the chief's vision, which I really found rewarding. Equally rewarding is that in my position and in my career, I'm not only able to interact with the valuable members of our community and our department on a professional level, but I'm also able to appreciate all they do as on a personal level, because I care about them not just as professionals, but also as individuals. And I really want to see them succeeding through my progressive leadership, because that way we'll be able to align the needs and expectations of the agency with the needs and goals of our employees as we're driving forward, trying to really create a cohesive bond between the community and the department moving forward. I'm currently able to support an atmosphere of teamwork and cooperation through my authentic communication style. Long term, I'd like to continue advancing into positions of leadership so that I can continue the achievement of our shared vision. So I would say now, after 15 years with the department, 11 as a supervisor, if you look at my knowledge, education, skills, and abilities, and that I've really been able to share a positive vision of what it means to be a leader in the Holyoke Police Department, I think I'm well suited to be the next captain so that I can help develop future leaders themselves as far as the officers that are coming after me, because I think that's also important. I also want to note that my leadership is off the job. I was previously a volunteer community mediator. I'm a current member of the Holyoke Taxpayers Association, and I've assisted with neighborhood cleanups. I'm currently seeking this promotion because I understand the need to align the needs of the agency with the community, and I think I really can make an immediate impact as the next captain to really strengthen departmental leadership. So we're not just pursuing, but we can actually achieve our shared vision and goals to provide the best public safety to the citizens of Holyoke. Thank you.
On that note, Charles, based on your experiences in your current position as lieutenant, and even your 15 years of experience within the police department, what are 3 improvements you'd like to make? What would you do first, and why?
So 3 improvements, I would say one of the big areas that our department certainly needs to improve is in recruitment and retention. I think that's, many police departments face that, and Holyoke is no exception to that. Also, training, I think having an FTO program moving forward in that capacity would be very beneficial. So when I look at how does that happen, I really want to say that the Holyoke Police Department does a lot of things correct, but like any progressive police agency, there's always going to be areas where we can improve. And I think when we look at these areas long term, we're going to find external and internal areas that kind of conflict and are related to that. So externally, it's going to be the media. The media has certainly not helped the profession with, the public sentiment. But as the department, that's where we find us operating. So I think to combat that, more positive stories on social media would be beneficial. Also going to community colleges, job fairs, to get educated officers interested in the department. Also, community contacts. We have the South Holyoke Neighborhood Initiative, Bob the Bike Guy. We have the Boys and Girls Club, as well as many others. And I think these are all opportunities to work collaboratively with the community to really drive home that partnership. Now, some things in the department that I can do, my leadership is participative. I want to include the officers in the decision making because I know that's going to increase morale and job satisfaction, as well as lead to better decisions. But I also know that in order for the officers to want to stay here and be retained here, they need to feel comfortable. They need to have the equipment to do the job, but they also need leaders that are going to develop them, train them. So I look for training opportunities when officers are interested so that we can really develop them so they don't come in at a base level, but each day that they're operating on a progressive mindset. And through the trust and respect I'm able to cultivate with them, I think that really allows me to train and develop them long term. Thank you.
So you said recruitment and retention, training, improving the FTO program, communicating information to the public, and I think you even added a 4th, community level engagement. Of those, what would you do first?
So I think the first thing is engaging with the community. There's neighborhood meetings that can be set up with the city councilors, and we can have officers, myself can go to that, and we can really pull in the concerns of the community because we don't want to bridge a divide between the police department and the community. Really, we need to strengthen that. Many of our officers come from Holyoke, and it's unfortunate that then they become a police officer and there's kind of a divide amongst people they grew up with. And I think in order to bridge that gap, we need to be better to integrate more into the community. Also, I think the use of social media would really help that as well.
Thanks, Chuck. Chief?
What are the biggest challenges to policing currently, and how would you address them in your command?
So I think the biggest challenges are due to the inexperience. A lot of people don't want to join the profession, as well as the always constant funding constraints. I think the challenge is to really be creative, to utilize effectively the resources we have. And I think to maximize that, we need policy and oversight that's really in line with putting the best information in front of our officers, coupled with education and training, so that they're able to go out there and make the biggest impact they can. If you partner that on top of community policing and really pull into the community as a member of the department, I think that'll go a long way to solving a lot of our neighborhood problems. And when we bridge that gap, it's really going to help us solve problems on a greater scale, as opposed to just being responding to problems. We can be more proactive, and by building that partnership, it's going to strengthen what we're able to do on a limited scale. Long term, we definitely want to get the training up to a higher level. An FTO program would certainly go a long way. Officer safety and wellness has to be front and center for what we're trying to accomplish if we're going to combat that retention piece that I talked about earlier. And I think that's they kind of go hand in hand.
Colleen, you got number 4.
Hi, Charles.
Hello.
One of the top priorities of the mayor's administration is to implement DEI strategies and the best practice citywide. Please tell us what diversity, equity, and inclusion means to you, how you can support this initiative with the police department.
So diversity, equity, and inclusion, bias-free policing. I think that really comes down to building trust and legitimacy between the interaction between the police and the communities. For far too long, there's been a breakdown in that. And what needs to happen is we need to positively have those interactions and send officers to training so they're more in line with the thinking of diversity and inclusion. But I also want to highlight the Holyoke Police Department is a very diverse police department, and that has been a very good asset to the community because we reflect our community. And we know our community, and a lot of times when we have interactions, we can talk to the members of our community because we grew up here. And when there's anything separate from that, we're able to work through it because we have a lot of members who have a lot of background related to that. And I think it's important that we build upon that and really don't run away from it, but we really lean into it and celebrate the fact that we're very multilingual, cultural, and all of that really is a strength, not a weakness, that we should really seek to continue to lean on positively.
Very good, thank you.
All right, number 5.
Another administrative priority the mayor has is to create a system of accountability and professional development, which includes implementing performance evaluations. If you were to take on this role, how would you evaluate individual officers and the department as a whole? Explain how you would go about creating a culture of accountability in the police department.
Thank you for the question. So accountability is really important to having a functioning police department. There's so many individuals doing so many various duties that they do need to be held accountable. And one way I think that we can increase accountability is looking at best practices from other agencies. National standards, there's accreditation standards that would be well suited in Holyoke to improve upon what we're trying to accomplish here. And by looking at that, we'll see the criteria, because it might not be what some of our supervisors or officers currently think. And there might not be buy-in to that. You know, anything new, there might be a little pushback. So you want to get them on board early on so you can get the early adopters. Sometimes the strongest voices that oppose it could be the people who are going to push it once they really understand what it is. And I think the way to do that is to show that this is a performance improvement process, and accountability is one piece. But I don't want to focus on the punitive side, because I think we fall short in what we're trying to do. While that's certainly part of it, I think there's a lot of opportunity for growth when a system is put in place effectively and everyone is trained on it. And a new paradigm in policing is not a bad thing. And we would just have to make sure we're doing it in a systematic fashion so that it's not just piecemeal, but it's more comprehensive with, someone leading that program and then people under them taking on the various parts of it to really go implement it in a holistic approach. So, thank you.
From your experience, years of experience working in the Holyoke Police Department, what are some of the management/workplace challenges, and how would you go about overcoming/solving
Oh,
these
Cap,
challenges?
make sure the light is green.
There you go.
Oh, yeah, okay. From your years of experience in the Holyoke Police Department, what are some of the management workplace challenges, and how would you go about solving these challenges?
So the management challenges the department faces, I think it's more systems that need to be corrected in the department as far as not operating as we've always done. And I think, if I can say, I think we've done a good job at that. I know we have Mark 43 coming into the department. We've implemented a TASER program to make sure officers' safety is a concern. So really, the only management failures you would have are if you're not addressing the management failures. So as a captain, I want to make sure I'm flexible of what I'm doing. If something's not working, stop doing it. Take a step back, see what you can do. There's, a host of best practices, evidence-based policing strategies that we can rely on. So we don't have to do that alone. There's resources available. I think the key to it is to know those resources exist and then implement them in the Holyoke Police Department. The Holyoke Police Department doesn't have to come up with how the best policing works. What we need to do is have leaders and managers going out there and bringing those back to the department so that we're continually evolving, and that's in partnership with our community. We shouldn't be doing this just police department. It's a police department that serves the city, and we need to bring in that piece because that's going to alleviate a lot of the problems. Because we always need to remember we exist to serve the public, and they need to have their say as well. Thank you.
Can I just ask a quick question? You mentioned Mark 43. Can I just ask what that is?
It's an updated software management system.
Perfect, thank you.
Hi. Describe the relationship that should exist between the captain and those reporting to him or her. What experience do you have in leading a team of people?
So the relationship that needs to exist for the department to function between the captain and those that report to me are trust, respect, approachability. Really, I need to be the best example for the men and women of the Holyoke Police Department. And in order to do that, I need to expect excellence from them. And in order to do that, they need to have the equipment, the training, and performance counseling at times to do that. I also need to make sure that I'm instilling responsibility in them. And to do that, I want to make sure I'm delegating tasks to them that they're able to perform. I want to make sure they're able to perform it. I explain what the success is, and I interact throughout the process so they're not just, what am I doing? The deadline has to be known. And I need to evaluate to make sure that this is kind of going where we're supposed to be going. I also think it's important that I engage with the officers because I know some people will come to me, but some won't. So I need to actively seek out members of the department to really pull in that knowledge. That's really going to bring us into more of a team atmosphere. You don't want to have outlier employees just because their personality might be a little different. We want to include them all because you're going to get better decisions by doing that. I also want to make sure I'm listening, learning about my employees. If there's a need for employee assistance program or they have something going on at home, because I care about the employees not just as professionals but as human beings. And if you take care of that part of the officer, which unfortunately in policing has really been detrimental, which is why there's an exodus and people aren't coming. Well, if we want to get that back, we need to have leaders that are saying these things to get them on board, that they're going to have captain managers that really want to do that. They don't just see them as like, oh, you're the next, go cover this area, all that stuff. Yes, I get there's a job to do, but there's people doing the job, and you got to care about the human being, not the output. Thank you.
Thank you. Charles, can you give me a specific example of a time when you had to conform to a policy which you did not necessarily agree with?
Conform to a policy I did not agree with. Well-
there might not be any, so it's okay.
I could say I now have a beard, and there was a policy against beards at one time. That's really all I could get out of this, so that's what I went for. And I think if I could elaborate on that and explain what I would say about something that, silly or whatever, is that's an example of how policing has evolved. Tattoos, beards, we're not a static agency, nor should we be. And as we're reflecting the community more and more, we're breaking that stigma of police look a certain way and the community looks, we're breaking that divide. So I think that when you have policies like that and you're flexible, I mean, that's, the example, but I think there's a deeper underlying thing. So when I'm dealing with policy and oversight, I want to look for opportunities to really move the ball in a positive direction.
Great, thank you.
That's good. Give me an example of a time when you had to make a split-second decision.
A split-second decision. Well, I can tell you it was when I got the letter of accommodation. It was a double homicide, unfortunately, which happens far too common in our community. And I was always taught to make the scene larger than initially. And one of the officers was putting it too short. And I went up and I said, all right, you got to do that. And he did that. And I think what that highlights is my understanding of situational leadership, because although I'm a participative manager and I want to have the officers included in the decision-making, I understand that there's times where we need to act in emergencies, and we don't have time to do that. And it's being able to weigh out the task that needs to be completed with the relationship between the members, and they really respect that, because if most of the time I'm this way, but then I'm, this way over here, acting quicker, they get that, they want that. So I would say when the need arises, that's kind of how that happens.
Thank you.
Okay. Tell me about a time when you were able to successfully deal with another person, even when that individual may not have personally liked you.
Or vice versa.
Okay. So in the CO's office, we do field a lot of calls from various residents. And I think the best way for you to get a read on me for this in the interview is to kind of explain what I'm thinking when I answer that phone. And as a Holyoker, I've lived here my whole life. I appreciate the diversity of our community, and I certainly understand the challenges. But I also know that no matter where people are in their life, they're still human beings, and a lot of times when they deal with me, they're dealing with me possibly on the worst day. So when I get calls for complaints or annoyances or can you help me with this or that, I really try to go the extra mile with them to build a relationship, because I don't want to just solve their problems on these telephone calls. I want to make sure they know, because they're not hearing it sometimes. They need to know that we're a partnership. You're a valuable member of the community. Here's how you can help. And I do remember one time a gentleman called to complain, and it ended up being that he ended up apologizing to the officer, which I didn't foresee coming. And it took me by surprise. But what I found so satisfying about that is these interactions between myself and members of the community, that's where the nuggets of this are. That's where the real value of this profession lie, is those interactions day to day. You don't want us just going to 130 at Appleton Street, answering the phone, brushing you off. And when you have Captain Monfett in the office and a member of the public calls, that's the kind of person they're going to get. Someone who's walked the walk in this city and understands it and doesn't judge them. Sure, they might have a problem, maybe I don't even agree with, but as long as I keep that human connection, that I think is where we're going to go far, not just as a department, but as a community.
Charles, can you tell me about a time when you were forced to make an unpopular decision?
An unpopular decision. Pretty much unpopular decision. Well, if the officers have to do something, stay somewhere longer, check out a crime area, I would say those are usually unpopular. But what I have found beneficial is when you explain the reason that happens. And if you're able to get across to the officers the greater picture, a lot of the stuff we're doing in policing is not the problem in front of you. It's what happens after that. We have to involve sense making and being able to put things together that don't necessarily seem connected. And if you're able to bridge that gap with the officers and then they go out there, what's also going to happen is that's going to increase their job satisfaction because you're empowering them to make better decisions, and it shows them the power of their job in a positive way. Police have a lot of power, but we need to use it in a positive way because we can do a lot of good in the community if we're going out there doing the right things for the right reasons.
Very good, thank you.
Thanks, Chuck.
Describe your approach to developing and maintaining an effective chain of command.
So in order to maintain an effective chain of command, there really has to be buy-in from everyone in the chain of command and understand it. There has to be a benefit to them as well. In order to use the chain of command for efficiency, if it's not helpful, they're going to use the grapevine, and that's where rumors can spread and it's not as effective. But I think it's also important with the lateral communication between bureau commanders or at the captain's level between the various captains, so that you don't want to be so stringent on the chain of command. You have to have fails bridges, which really are going to bring you from one part of the chain of command and it's a shortcut to another. You don't want to heavily rely on those, but what you do want to do is make sure that the communication net works for the organization. And then there's going to be some people that might violate that, and they need to be held accountable, and they need to be retrained and see what it is that made them do it. Was it a lack of knowledge? Are they upset in the job? So those are opportunities. I think a big thing for me is when I hear the word problem, I really look at the word opportunity, because any problem can be solved with the right resources and effort and motivation. And if we're doing that as a department, we're really going to move forward on this public safety initiatives that we're trying to take. So as problems come up, solve them. Maybe you need an outside agency. Maybe you need a stakeholders meeting. But at the end of the day, there's no issue that with commitment from our members that we're not going to be able to solve together.
How would you handle a situation where two members of the crew are in disagreement over how to complete a task?
So that does happen. I think the first thing I like to do is to see why, talk to the officers separately and see what is it they agree about. Is it a lack of information that a little clarity can help them with? Or is there something they find distasteful? Maybe they're going through something personally, and this might have been the final thing that, it leads to a conversation for employee assistance. Or it could be a situation where they didn't want to do it because they didn't feel competent in that. And that's a big training problem. We need officers, because they're going to get called to things, all kinds of things. They need the training and the tools and the support from the administration to confidently go at that. Now, if there's a disagreement of anything else that isn't in line with any of that, I'll make sure they're held accountable as far as if, they're violating any policies that, they're not doing what they're supposed to do, which does happen as well. But I feel like too often times we jump to that part, and there's a lot of underlying factors. I don't think anyone comes to work and says, I want to be bad at my job. They come there, and they're not supported. They don't have the tools, and they don't have a management system that really holds them up. So I want to be part of that. I have a lot of training and knowledge. It does me no good. Nobody cares how much I know until they know how much I care. I want to share that knowledge with our members so that we're not just solving the day-to-day problems, but we're taking a preventative approach. And by having that long-term success as an organization, I think we can really move it forward.
Can you describe the most rewarding experience of your career thus far?
Well, I think there's been a lot of rewarding experiences. I think the basic reward of this job is serving the citizens of Holyoke. To be a lifelong resident of the city and, join the police department and make a positive impact on members of the community, especially vulnerable members of the community, in situations where I get to give extra, where I know I don't necessarily have to. And nobody's watching me, and I get to be in those moments, those hallways, that person that fell down, and I don't need to start checking boxes of the minimum police work, but I get to do the extra stuff. I get to help them up slowly, wipe their coat off, things of that nature. And that's where I get a lot of satisfaction on this job, is doing the extra. Because I didn't become a Holyoke police officer just to have a job, just to have a career. It's a job I've always wanted, I've always aspired to it, and I aspire to it for a service motive. And now that I'm in this position, that service motive is absolutely going to be the way I operate. Thank you.
Charles, those are our questions for today. I want to thank you so much, actually, for your commitment to the police department, the years of experience that you've put in, and also continue to grow here in the police department and trying to make a positive and wanting to make a positive impact. I didn't make note of this. I'm letting you know that these questions, we're rating them. There's no real weight one way or another because civil service does dictate that. However, it helps conversationally with us where we like how we rate each of you rated and for your own professional growth, I think, because if and when you do get selected, you'll obviously be sitting down with your supervisor, and we want to give you input on how you did and where some areas you think that we can help you grow based on some of the answers you gave and things like that. So that's why we're doing this part too. But
Thank you for that.
do you have anything else you want to share that we might have missed or left out before we end?
The only thing I would share with everyone here is as a lifelong resident of Holyoke, I have my home in Holyoke. My children go to the Holyoke Public Schools, and it would be the opportunity of a lifetime to serve as the next captain in the city of Holyoke that I'm very invested in, and I do want to see the department move in a positive direction. So thank you.
Lieutenant Monfett, thank you so much.
He was good. Oh, sorry. I know, I should have told you. You could just, you could just write, do you remember stuff, and you can write it down. Yeah. I know. Sorry, I should have told you. I just started taking
So right here, we have Kelly Curran, who's our personnel director, me, the mayor, Chief Pratt. We also have members of our police relations advisory team, Colleen Chesmore, Axel, former captain retired, Fletcher, and Kalana. We're gonna, as you're already familiar with, Captain Civil Service dictates these promotions in the order of which you scored on the test. This is a very non-traditional approach. You recall we've done this one time before with previous, and I want to kind of continue that for a few reasons, even though we go through the order of that. Obviously, if there's no reason to bypass candidates at minimum, this gives an opportunity for the public to get to know the candidates. It's open to the public. People are streamlining. It's being broadcasted in Channel 15. It's an opportunity for folks to get to know who these candidates are, how these questions are being answered, and then offer some professional growth as well. So if there's an opportunity, as you'll notice when we answer these questions, there's going to be opportunity to, sit down with your supervisor later if and when you do get selected to serve in one of these two open positions that there's opportunity there for some training or professional growth. We're going to rate your questions. Again, the civil service dictates that there's no real weight to this, but instead helps us understand, how you answer these questions and, how we can help you grow in the city professionally, if there even needs to be. But with that being said, how are you feeling? Are we comfortable currently? So you ready to dive in? All right. So Kelly, you want to start
Oh,
off?
hold on. Don't you want me to?
Oh, see, that was the problem we were doing last time.
Yeah.
So Chief Pratt's
Mayor
going to
gets
kind
anxious.
of go over an introduction of the Lieutenant Harrison and off.
So this is Lieutenant Mark Harrison. He started with the police department as a reserve officer in 2006, promoted to full-time police officer in 2008. He spent the majority of that time in patrol on the 4 to 12 shift. He was promoted to sergeant in 2020 and lieutenant in 2021. His current assignment is he is a commanding officer on the 4 to 12 shift. He has 2 letters of commendation and a letter of appreciation. He has nothing of disciplinary. And he has, for training experience, he has a bachelor's degree. He's an instructor in implicit bias training, instructor in police survival. He's been an instructor in animal cruelty investigations. He's attended the FBI LEADA supervisor command leadership course and also the internal affairs course.
Thank you, Chief. Lieutenant, please tell us a little bit about yourself, what qualifications, experience you have that will make you successful in this career as captain.
Well, I became a police officer after a 4-year tour on active duty in the United States Army. It seemed like a natural progression for me. I kind of slid right in. I've been working in the profession to make a difference in the community, to better myself along the way. I think a lot of what I've learned in the military kind of solidified who I am as a person, and I've built upon that in terms of how I approach the job and how I bring that, basically how I bring that to the community and how I apply enforcing the law. But it's not just enforcing the law, it's making that difference to the community and showing the community that we're a partnership to grow and better ourselves. It's not an us against them. It's a us to improve as we go forward. Like I said, I worked hard over a slow progression towards my degree at Westfield State. As I've grown in
Westfield State.
Yeah, as I've grown in leadership positions within the department, I've continued to seek ways to better my own education, whether it be through courses offered through the MPTC. They've been fortunate to provide these LEADA classes and a lot more opportunities for us to attend. And I've really been reflecting on how a position like this as a captain, what I need to do to get in that right mindset for management, for leadership, for really assessing where I need to be personally and professionally to make that step. And one of the things that I've been leaning on mostly is just reading. I've been reading whatever I can get my hands on, trying to absorb and get into that right state of mind, and like I said, set that mindset to approach this job and this requirement with all I've got.
Thank you. Go ahead, Chief.
I think you're up. Yeah.
Yeah, I went first. You mixed it up.
Oh, we're going to switch it up. All right. Throwing me off here. All right. Based on your experience in your current position, what three improvements would you make? What would you do first and why?
Well, being in field operations for the majority of my career, just experiencing it at all levels. I've one of the things that I've brought from the military and my perceptions of things is a chain of command and a clear definition of that authority and accountability underneath that. And I think that there are some things that could be, some issues that arise that could be taken care of and handled when that is in place and functions properly. I would definitely address the ongoing communication improvements that we've been doing in the department. I think one of my initial interviews was, what would you do? And it was to improve the communication. At the time, we didn't have email accessible outside of the station. So email it was basically like having a bulletin board in the station to get any information. So I mean, we've taken, and that hasn't been all that long, so we've taken some good steps towards improving that communication, and we'll continue to do so. Third thing I would say is that as we have a lot of new officers, young officers, and the department is essentially a younger department, it becomes more imperative that we continue to enforce and encourage as much training as we can, wherever we can get it, through creative ways. I think we can't afford costs as a department as a whole, whatever the MPTC can offer us, and then whatever we can encourage our officers to do on their own. You said reading is I wish I had started reading more books on my own earlier in my career. For management and leadership, it's interesting to look, to reflect back on how the military views leadership, and they put that front and center, and they just start hammering you with leadership, and it's all about leadership. You can't go anywhere without the people who you're leading following you, and it's vital to how we operate as a department.
So just let me clarify. So a clear chain of command, communication improvements, and encourage and foster training in new officers. The second part of that question, I know it was sort of two-part. What would you do first and why?
The first part would be to address the chain of command, and I've talked about it with some of my fellow officers, and making sure that we have a clear job description and job responsibilities, so that people know exactly what's required of them, and that can be enforced and encouraged along those lines. I think everything revolves around that, and having those clear-cut lines of responsibility and accountability are important, and that's where we would start.
Hi, Mark. Question number 3. What are the biggest challenges to policing currently, and how would you address them in your command?
I think that policing faces many challenges. First, I think, would be trust, the trust of the community. I think we have to just operate on a daily basis, displaying those qualities that we expect our officers to show the community and the way we treat the community. Mm-hmm. So building that trust comes on many levels, from just our answering calls to showing up at community events, to showing our faces that we're not just a strict law enforcement, that we're part of the community, that we're there to build that trust, to build that sense of partnership with the community. I think that our perception, or the way that we're perceived nationwide, has taken a hit over many years, and I think that's going to take quite a while for us to recover from. It seems like every time we might take a step forward, we're getting knocked back a step or two by something that an officer did on the other side of the country, and that's going to continue to be a challenge. So once again, that points to our operations on a daily basis, that we keep our people doing the things that they're supposed to do, that we hold them to a high standard, that we keep them accountable and disciplined in the profession, and explain to them what our mission is and what our goals are in this community.
Very good, thank you.
One of the top priorities of the mayor's administration is to implement DEI strategies and best practices citywide. Please tell us what diversity, equity, and inclusion mean to you. How can you support this initiative within the police department?
I think that diversity, equity, and inclusion are very, very important these days, as they should always be. I believe that we as a department are moving in that direction. I think that we are continuing to hire from the civil service and to have our department represent our community, and continue to encourage everyone who needs to be not marginalized, allowed to express and be part of what we're doing without any fear of any, clarify that, while being able to just be part of what we do. I think that it's vital to what we do, as we show the community how we are accepting. If we can't be accepting as a department of ourselves, we can't show the community how accepting we are of everyone involved, and be able to listen to and take into account everyone's point of view and their concerns that have been overlooked for a long period of time. And it's good that those things are being brought to the forefront and discussed. Otherwise, they get overlooked and are missed.
Another administrative priority of the mayor is to create a system of accountability and professional development, which includes implementing performance evaluations. If you were to take on this role, how would you evaluate an individual officer and the department as a whole? Explain how you would go about creating a culture of accountability in the police department.
Well, to refer back to what I mentioned before about job descriptions, understanding what is required, and having that be clear, so we can build that framework of what's required, what's accepted, and demanded of our officers. We would have to look at it from a point of view that we are doing it as a training, as a goal to better our officers. Those evaluations should be, I'm going to refer back to my military. We had counseling for them, so you met yearly, and you were counseled as to your performance and what was good and what was bad, and you were given a clear direction to improve on those areas that you were lacking, and then you were praised for areas where you were, doing well. I think some part of that would have to come into our evaluations. There's a lot of other issues that would surround the evaluations with contracts and civil service and everything else, but just with all that aside, just a bare bones approach to it, I think that we would have to give some kinds of benefits for those who are succeeding and doing well. Create an atmosphere of maybe a little competition to have the guys and girls work against each other to better, to everyone seeking to improve. Who's going to do better this time around? It's that healthy competition can create a good area of overall betterment of the department. I think that would be a really great place for us to head.
From your years of experience working in HPD, what are some management/workplace challenges, and how would you go about overcoming/solving these challenges?
Well, management challenge number one has been our staffing. It's a continuous battle that we fight. I've been fortunate to be part of our recently formed hiring committee over the past year or two to really be immersed in the approach to our hiring, so we can see our candidates and find the best ones. So I've been blessed to be part of that, and I've appreciated that role that I've had there. I think taking that question and kind of referring it back to the last question is to having these high evaluations is to choosing our officers who display the qualities that we're looking for and placing them in roles. Sometimes I think the officers might feel stagnant in what they're doing and not see a lot of opportunity to do different things within the department. And if we as supervisors and our leaders could recognize that and focus on those that we see the potential as our next leaders, to really drive that home, to make sure that that we're not overlooking or letting, potential, our future potential leaders, just kind of ride by and answer their calls and not demanding more of them to do the job.
Can you describe the relationship that should exist between the captain and those reporting to him or her? And what experience do you have leading a team of people?
Well, I believe that the captain should be the overall authority on his team, on his chain of command. He should be delegating most of his tasks that he oversees and approves the end product, and then answers that to the chief. I believe that the chain of command is vital at that level, and I don't believe that the captain can be doing 100 jobs himself. He needs to utilize his lieutenants. He needs to delegate those tasks which they should be trained and capable of handling, and then bringing back the finished product or questions on a task to get further guidance on, and part of that delegation as a whole.
And what experience do you have leading a team of people?
My experiences of leading a team of people, I've been overseeing our dispatch center for close to a year now. So there's been some challenges there, but seeing our civilians in our dispatch center, which is the heart of our functioning day-to-day operations, has been a good experience, and I've been bringing them all together. We've faced staffing issues in there, and our training level is up. So I've been overseeing that. I would continue to refer back to my base, my strong base of my military experience. I led a crew on a Bradley fighting vehicle when I was in the service. I was responsible for millions of dollars worth of equipment, and our operational readiness, our accountability of equipment, our assessment of the mission. Like I said, it was a great building block and a stepping stone for me to step into police work, and it's been a good experience and experience overall for me, I think.
Great, thank you.
Can you share any examples of a time when you had to conform to a policy with which you did not agree with?
Give me a minute on that one.
And there might not be an example.
I don't know that I have, if there's been any new or recent policies that have, come up. However, the chief didn't want to change our policy for our facial hair, but I appreciate his other approach in how we've
That
done it.
policy officially changed.
Yeah. So, but if that was not a thing, we follow the policy and we enforce it, and we're the face of that policy as the leaders of this department. And we own it, and the chief is the boss, plain and simple. So that's where we have to go.
Yeah.
You complain up, you don't complain down. You listen to your subordinates and their concerns about it. You hear them, and you can bring them to your superior, and where they go from there, depends. If there's a discussion or a reassessment of a policy. There's been some talk about possibly having some kind of a policy team or group as we review those going forward. I think that's very important in this day and age with post, with best practices, is continuing, because they're not just one and done. They're living and breathing things. As policing changes, as our approach to policing changes, we have to have our policies come along as well. So.
That's good. Thank you.
Can you give me an example of a time when you had to make a split-second decision?
Yes. I know we had an incident on Ivy Ave. I know I brought this up when I was before you. We had a barricaded suspect up on Ivy Ave a few years ago, and it was there was somebody who was injured out on the street, and then the suspect was up there seriously injured, and we had to make decisions, and I coordinated with supervisors of the detective bureau, and we made decisions on how we were going to handle it. It was imperative that we make that decision right away. It was that we make the decision on the street, coordinate our resources, or if this was something that needed to be done and involved, say, a larger resource like state police, how long we were going to let a suspect be barricaded, et cetera. So those decisions needed to be made, and we did so on the street. I was a street supervisor that day, and we made it happen, and without further major injury, all officers were uninjured, and everybody cleared the scene that day.
Tell me about the time you're able to successfully deal with another person, even when the individual may not have personally liked you, or vice versa.
I think that we deal with that quite a lot on the job. A lot of times we don't feel liked. We're not in my position now. I don't have the interactions face to face as much on the street as I used to. A lot of it's more via telephone and handling complaints and handling people who are upset about something. And that's that's important to be an active listener, to show the care and compassion that's deserved no matter what else we're doing in the commanding officer's office, that we take that time to listen to the concerns of those people who clearly don't like us on the telephone, and that we are the one who, we're the ones that caused it when we weren't. I think that I've given it the time and patience and active listening that was necessary to at the end of it. Sometimes it might take 45 minutes on the phone, or if you've explained it and they don't like the explanation of the way the laws are or our current ordinances. But at the end, when people felt listened to, that goes a long way. And when you're thanked at the end of that conversation, you feel like you've actually, been productive, and you feel good about taking that time that you spent to hear their concerns.
Very good, thank you.
Tell me about a time when you were forced to make an unpopular decision.
I feel like there should be a few of those to choose from. I'm not having any that are jumping out at me initially. I think that some of the work that I've done in our dispatch center, we've had to kind of restructure and rebuild some things that have not been popular, and our dispatchers have separated their union from the city hall clerks, us as a public service or a public safety agency. Our needs are different than the clerks here at City Hall. But until we get that all in place, we're trying to make decisions that are best for everybody involved, but it's the majority, it's not all. So we try to keep most people happy in dealing with their union representation. Some of the decisions that we've made in that area have not been popular, but at least we're trying to do for the best for the group as a whole, and for them to function for us as a department as a whole. So I think that we address that and listen to the concerns of the unpopularity of it, or the anger of somebody feeling wronged or what in that situation. But like I said, I keep referring back to active listening, hearing what people have to say. even if we can't change the outcome, you know, so it's that important to hear what people are saying and acknowledge their concerns.
Lieutenant, describe your approach to developing and maintaining an effective chain of command.
Well, I think I've touched on that a little bit already. I would say that initially we'd have to clarify the responsibilities, the job responsibilities, not so much title, but the job description, and really build on that and build that structure, that framework that can function under a chain of command. In that way, it's clear what the accountability and the requirements are under that.
How would you handle a situation where two members of the crew are in disagreement over how to complete a task?
Well, I would bring them together. I would sit down and we'd hash it out. We'd try to have the big ears, little mouth approach, where sometimes that's difficult with some of the people that we work with. We're all wanting to be heard, and our approach is the best, but everybody needs to be heard, and we need to decide what's the best approach, what's the best. It doesn't have to be whoever has the best argument, but it's being reasonable. It's taking into consideration all accounts, and being open to hearing the other side, not going with your first gut instinct. Sometimes that's needed when a split-second decision is needed. However, if it's in a situation where we just have a disagreement and we're trying to work out what we're going to do or where we're going to go, we'll look to what's in place. Is there policies? Is there procedures? Is this just a disagreement on the way we're going to do it? Is it open to interpretation? We'll listen to sides involved and determine the most reasonable course of action.
So the easiest question of the day. Describe the most rewarding experience of your career thus far. I thought it was going to be easy, sorry.
It is. Maybe there's so many. It's interesting to look at it from different points of view in that regards, whether it be an interaction with the citizen on a call, whether it be getting a phone call or a letter from someone who thanked you for helping their parent who had an issue with a truck that took down their cable wires, and just really taking the time to kind of show them the attention and concern, It's just a lot of things like that. It's little things that kind of add up. I don't know that I've got one major incident that sticks out to me. It's those little things that keep you appreciative of the way you're doing the job and keep you on that path of continuing that approach to the way you deal with people. And you treat them as people. It's not just a call you're going on. You think of people as is that your family member, your grandmother, your sibling, something like that. That's important. That can be lost sight of in this job at times. When you keep doing the same thing over and over again, and you're dealing in negative situations with our community, it's important to get those little bits of encouragement that remind you that you're doing the right thing, and you're bringing the right thing to the job and treating people with dignity and respect that they deserve.
Awesome. You passed.
Good job. Lieutenant Harrison, that concludes our interview. We do have other candidates we're going to continue reviewing. At this time, is there anything we didn't touch upon that you might want to ask us at the moment? Any questions?
No, I think just one thing I really wanted to mention at the end of this was that we've all been through this fiasco with the civil service and the exam. I think we've got a good group of lieutenants and all of us who have taken it. We all kind of were along the lines of thinking that no matter where this all fell, we were happy with the group of guys and girls that we had that want to make this place better and do everything for the community.
Oh, that's great to
I'm
hear.
looking forward to wherever we land, that we're going to be taking good steps to the future.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
All
Lieutenant.
right, thank
Good
you very
job.
much.
We have in front of us Lieutenant Matthew Welch. Welcome, Matt. You're the third candidate we're interviewing today of 5. And I believe you already know, but obviously we're a civil service community. The order, we're filling 2 open roles in the captain position. The order really goes into, those that have ranked accordingly in the test results of civil service. But even though that might be the case, the mayor, I am the appointing authority, but we're taking a non-traditional approach. You remember the first time around when you sought the position of lieutenant, and now here you are going forward in the role of captain. We're gonna, just like last time, we're gonna ask you a set of questions and rate them accordingly. The rate doesn't have any real weight, because civil service is what dictates the line of who gets to serve next into these roles. But it helps us kind of have a conversation into how you answer these questions. The questions that are here in front of us are questions that we came up with together. Kelly Curran, our personnel director, myself, our police chief, members of the Police Relations Advisory Team. 4 are with us today. We have Colleen, Axel, retired Captain Police Fletcher, and Kalana. And so we're just going to kind of do a round robin here. We'll each ask you a question. But before we dive in, you have any questions for us? Or are you feeling comfortable? We're good to go? All right.
Okay.
Excellent.
Okay, I'll just start with a quick overview. This is Lieutenant Matthew Welch. He started with our department in 2003 as a reserve officer. He became a full-time officer in 2007. He was assigned primarily to patrol. He was also assigned as a canine officer in 2014. He was promoted to sergeant in 2021 and promoted again to lieutenant in 2022. He is currently a commanding officer of the midnight to 8 shift, and he has 1 commendation and 4 letters of appreciation. He has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. He was a canine handler, a unit supervisor of that. He's been a member and a leader now of the Honor Guard, and he is a previous DT taser instructor, and he has attended the FBI LEADA command leadership training. And I'm starting this time.
Nothing on file of concern?
Nothing on file of concern. First question, we'll jump right into the questions. Please tell us a little bit about yourself. What qualifications, experiences do you have that make you successful, that will make you successful in this career as a captain?
I grew up in the city of Holyoke for many years. I attended both public and private schools in Holyoke. I graduated from Holyoke High School. I then went to Westfield State, where I got my bachelor's degree in criminal justice.
Westfield State again. There we go.
From there, I then was a correction officer at the Hamden County House of Corrections for approximately 2.5 years. I learned a great deal there. And I was fortunate enough to get hired at the police department in 2003. I did most of my time in patrol. I believe I did 14 years in patrol. I did approximately 8 years as a canine handler. And then I was lucky enough to start making rank as a sergeant, now lieutenant of the midnight to 8 shift. And we will see what happens in the future. Qualifications, I'm going to have my bachelor's degree in criminal justice. And one of the better classes that I've recently attended had been the FBI LEADA leadership program. I've completed 2 out of the 3 trilogies to complete that class.
Based on your experience in your current position, what 3 improvements would you make, and what would you do first and why?
3 improvements, maybe communication, training, and maybe movement.
What's that?
Movement.
Movement?
Basically, movement from patrol to detective bureau or narcotics or just other positions within the police department. I believe that officers, it helps them with incentive to do their job, knowing that there is room for always improvement and learning on the job, and to go into different bureaus to learn different aspects of the job. So that would be where I'd try to improve movement. Communication and training. Communication, sometimes there can be a little miscommunication between shifts or between levels of command. I do believe it has gotten better recently, but as always, there's always room for improvement. And training, policing, there's a lot of gray in policing. There's very little black and white. Laws are always changing, and techniques, and I feel that as a police officer, you need to continue your training throughout your entire career. Again, as laws are always changing. I've been on the job for almost 21 years, and there's already been a huge change from 21 years ago to today. So I believe you need to continue your training to keep and become a better police officer.
What would you tackle first?
It'd be close between the training and the communication, but maybe the training part of it. Again, I find it very important that you need to stay on top of training so that you can be the best police officer that you can be.
What are the biggest challenges to policing currently, and how would you address them in your command?
Biggest challenge in policing. Good question. Biggest challenge, one of the biggest challenges in policing. I would say, and not to revert to it, but training. There have been a lot of events the past couple of years that have affected the nation. And I believe that it's very important, again, not to go back to it, but very important to keep up on your training. And maybe some things could have changed differently, had different results. So I feel like training is one of the biggest challenges that we face. We go through the initial 6-month police academy, but then you have to be proactive about going out and getting the training. So they do a great job with the first 6 months, and then it sort of teeters off after that. So I think that training, you have to stay proactive with it and keep up on it.
And how would you address them in your command?
To send, on the midnight shift, it'd be to send the guys to training classes to keep up with laws and new techniques. As long as, of course, the manpower's there and the money's there. But yeah, just keep guys well informed.
One of the top priorities of the mayor's administration is to implement DEI strategies and best practices citywide. Please tell us what diversity, equity, and inclusion means to you, and how can you support this initiative within Holyoke Police Department?
To include everybody. It doesn't matter what your gender, your race, your ethnicity is, to include everybody. And I feel that talking with people that have different backgrounds and different life experiences, different traditions than you. I'm Irish Catholic, but it's nice to talk to other people with different backgrounds so that you can become a more well-rounded person. And you then become, I feel like if you
talk to them and gain an understanding of how other people grew up, you can understand like their backgrounds better, and it makes you a more well-rounded person. I do believe that the police department has done a great job in the last few years with the diversity, and I believe that our department is a great reflection upon the citizens of Holyoke.
Another administrative priority the mayor has is to create a system of accountability and professional development, which includes implementing performance evaluations. If you were to take on this role, how would you evaluate individual officers and the department as a whole? Explain how you would go about creating a culture of accountability in the police department.
Through fairness, I think everybody needs to be held accountable to the same level. We're all police officers. I believe we're all held to a higher standard. So I think that to do performance evaluations, just like this, needs to be the same questions that are provided to everybody so that you gain an understanding of where the deficiencies are and where you can improve upon them. How would I implement it? Maybe have a board similar to this, where you have people of different stature and positions and different backgrounds. And I feel like the more people, to a certain extent, that are involved in that process, you have a better outcome with more ideas of how to fix things.
From your years of experience working in the Holyoke Police Department, what are some management or workplace challenges, and how would you go about overcoming or solving these challenges?
One of the challenges that I've experienced on the midnight shift as lieutenant has been communication. Sometimes on the midnight shift, you can feel like you're on an island sometimes, where you see the 412 shift or you see the day shift very quickly. But sometimes on midnights, the communication can be a little not as good as it should be. So I think the communication within the department and fixing it, whether it's not perfectly through emails, but emails, phone calls, or meetings to get together and talk about the issues at hand.
Describe the relationship that should exist between the captain and those reporting to him or her. What experience do you have in leading a team of people?
I think it's you need a good working relationship with other commanders and patrol officers. We have over 100 people in our department, so everyone's not going to be best of friends. But I feel that the 8 hours that you work, you need to communicate with each other so that you have a better understanding of what is going on in the police department and on each shift. What was the second part of that, Mayor?
What experience do you have in leading a team of people?
Well, I played sports all my life. I believe that being part of a team has definitely helped. The famous quote, "There's no I in team." I think that being part of a team, sports team, is the same thing as being a police department, just a bigger team. Yeah.
Thanks.
Can you give me an example of a time when you had to conform to a policy with which you did not agree? And you may not have one, but that's okay too.
I can't really think of a specific policy that comes to my mind right now. But in responding to that, it's important that you do conform to the policies. They are there to protect the citizens, and to protect the members of the police department. They're not just thrown together, they are put together by a group of people that have come to a decision that holds people accountable and, again, protects members of the city and the police department.
Can you give me an example of a time when you had to make a split-second decision?
One that's just jumping out of my mind right now would be, I remember when I received a call for a suicidal person. I was the first to arrive on scene. There was a trail of blood going into an apartment, and so I entered the apartment to make sure that they were all right. This party was sitting on the couch in his living room, bleeding. That's where the blood was coming from. I remember talking with him, and I remember seeing the knife on the coffee table. So in speaking with him, I was able to secure the knife. Unbeknownst to me, he had another one. That's when he got up, started walking towards me with it. I had to retreat out of the apartment. And I remember that when I pulled up, outside the apartment, there were kids playing. There was a lot of public out. It was during the summer. And as he made his way out of the apartment, I continued to talk to him, try to calm him down, give him different options. And right before he exited the apartment, he started to listen and communicate with me. And that's when he went back into his apartment. More officers had arrived on scene, and we ended up talking with him for about a half hour, 45 minutes in his apartment. And we were able to convince him to go to the hospital and seek help. But it was one of those split-second decisions that happened very fast. Not necessarily the talking part of it, but the initial on-scene gathering information it happened very quickly. It's funny, things can happen very quickly, but then slow down in your mind also as you're going through them. But that's one of the split-second decisions that I was faced.
Great, thank you.
Tell me about a time you were able to successfully deal with another person, even when that individual may not have personally liked you, or vice versa.
As far as being a supervisor, again, like I said before, we don't all need to be best friends. We're going to have people that are closer than us in the department, but we all need to work together. And being a supervisor on the midnight shift, I believe I'm accountable for approximately 20 people. And not everybody's going to like each other. But I think that if you can come to an understanding that we have a job to do and a greater good to do than just you two in that room. You know, as police officers, we have a greater good. We have to serve the public. And I feel like if we can come to an understanding and agreement upon that the decisions that we make are for the better. You don't necessarily need to agree with it, but hopefully there's an understanding, respect that, you know, things need to be done for a reason.
Can you tell me about a time when you were forced to make an unpopular decision?
Seems like the higher you go in command, the more unpopular decisions.
That's right.
Mayor and the chief, you can, you're not going to, when I first got in the police department, I tried to please everybody. And I realized very quickly that you can't please everybody. You can't make everybody happy with your decisions. And there are people that are going to be upset or don't agree with your decision that you make. But it is what it is, unfortunately. And a specific case, I know sometimes on shift, we have a lot of new guys, and some of them are very, they like to go out there and do police work. But sometimes when you need to make that tough decision, they don't always agree with it. But again, hopefully they respect that decision and knowing that you made that decision looking out for them. But but it may not always be the popular decision.
Describe your approach to developing and maintaining an effective chain of command.
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry. To develop and
To developing and maintaining an effective chain of command.
I feel like we have a pretty good chain of command at the police department. Obviously, there's a sergeant, lieutenant, captains, and the chief. And I feel like the department does that well, that there is a chain of command. And, you know, if there is an issue, you speak with your sergeant first. And then if he can't solve it, or if he or she feels they need to feel like they need to continue up the command, then they go to lieutenant and so forth. But I feel like we do have a pretty good chain of command at the police department.
How would you handle a situation where two members of the crew are in disagreement over how to complete a task?
Sometimes emotions get in the way. And I feel like if it's not something that needs to be decided right then and there, you can sort of let them have a cooling off period and then bring them back in and sort of basically be a mediator. If you can sit down and talk it out, let one person talk without the other person interfering with them. If you can just hear both sides, maybe then that the other person will now understand of where the other person was coming from, whether they saw something differently or maybe just, again, their life experiences, maybe their life experiences taught them something different. So I feel like the more communication that you can have and the understanding of where someone's coming from, that might help diffuse that situation.
Describe the most rewarding experience of your career this far. Well, it's the hardest question, isn't it?
Yeah. You know, unfortunately, as police officers, we are called to situations, bad situations, and we don't always see the outcome. But in my experience, I love being around kids and trying to explain to them what police officers do, not just what they see on TV or what they hear, but that police officers are human too. And I feel like when I was K-9, I did a lot of demos for schools and for groups. And it was good to be able to show them that there is another side to being a police officer. But being a K-9 handler put me in that position to be able to go out and teach the community, especially the young kids, what being a police officer is, and that there are many sides to us, not just what they see on TV or may hear.
Excellent. Those are our questions.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you want to share or maybe do a closing?
No, I think you guys did pretty well.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Good luck.
Thank you.
The chief has to leave for an appointment at 3:30. Make sure the green light's on.
Yeah, perfect. Just gave me the rundown.
It's 2:41. I think the chief's in the bathroom.
No problem.
Well, you participated in the last one too, did you?
I'm sorry?
When you came in for lieutenant, we interviewed you?
Yes, sir. I think we all had to wear masks last time, actually. That's going back a little ways now.
I actually joined online because I had COVID.
Oh, really?
First time throughout the whole, it was terrible. I was just hired too. And I
It was a
like,
wild time. I think we all had the glass and everything
Yeah,
that we had to sit
glass.
behind. Yeah.
No, we haven't even
Oh,
started.
you didn't start? I thought you were.
Welcome, Lieutenant. We have here Lieutenant Anthony SoDo. He's the fourth of the 5 candidates we're interviewing today. SoDo, as you remember, the names come from the civil service list based on the order of which it is based on the results
Yes,
of the
sir.
test. And since we're a civil service community, in our form of government here, the mayor is the appointing authority. Unless, there's a reason to bypass a candidate, the appointment goes in the order of that list.
Yes, sir.
I think the list stays good for about 2 years, and as positions open up, we go to the next. But, I'm a non-traditional mayor, and just like the last time, I wanted to keep this process open so the public to review and kind of learn and understand the process, as well as to, more importantly for me, folks get to know the candidates as we ask these questions. We learn a lot about your style.
Yes, sir.
We're going to be rating your answers. The rate has no weight into who gets to serve into these roles, but it helps us have a pretty robust conversation about the candidate and the leadership role that you would be stepping into should you get the opportunity.
Yes, sir.
And hopefully some opportunity for some professional growth as we try to understand the strategic direction we want to go as a city through the police department. We have here Kelly Curran, you remember, Personnel Director, myself, Police Chief Pratt, members of our Police Relations Advisory Committee, Colleen, Axel, retired Captain Welch, Fletcher, and Kalana. So with that being said, do you have any questions? Are you comfortable?
Oh, yes, sir. Ready when you
Going
are.
to start?
Yes, sir.
Chief will start
Okay.
with an introduction.
Real quick, this is Lieutenant Anthony SoDo. I'm going to apologize up front because I don't have his prior service time, but Anthony, I know, came to us from the Northampton Police Department, but he came to us in 2015 as a reserve officer for us, although he was already full-time trained. He became a full-time officer with the Holyoke Police Department in 2016. He was promoted to sergeant in 2020 and lieutenant in 2022. He is currently in charge of our professional standards unit, more ominously known as the IA division. And he has 1 certificate of recognition, 2 letters of recognition as well, and and 2 letters of appreciation. He has attended School of Police Command Staff School, Northwestern University. He has a law degree from Western New England School of Law. He has a master's and bachelor's and associate's degrees in criminal justice. He's a criminal law instructor for the academy. He has also accomplished the FBI Leadership Institute Trilogy Award, and he is also was an EMT.
Great. Thank you, Chief.
First question.
Colleen, do you want to go first?
Please tell us a little about yourself. What qualifications, experience do you have that will make you successful in this career as captain?
Boy, I absolutely hate talking about myself, but I'll try to come up with something. I've been a full-time police officer since 2011. As the chief said, I started my career in Northampton. I was also a part-time police officer in Belchertown for a couple years before that, sort of working my way up to bigger cities. This is my last stop on the journey here in Holyoke. I've got some experience, as the chief said, as a sergeant, a lieutenant. Secondary education has always been very, very near and dear to me. My mother's a teacher, so you can blame her for that one. It's several years ago now, 2021, I graduated from law school. I put myself through law school. I went in the evening while I was working on the overnight shift. Last year, I finished the School of Police Staff and Command at Northwestern University in Chicago. It's one of the top-ranked command colleges to sort of help me improve a lot of skills, ranging from management and leadership right down through human resources, budgeting, incident management, traffic design, you name it. It's a 23-week course that covers all sorts of different topics. Personal note, I've got a beautiful 9-month-old daughter at home. That's been quite a journey as my first child, so it's been quite a journey to go on. And hanging out with her and my dog is about my most favorite things to do, and my wife, of course. If given the chance, if I had to rank them, Yeah.
Based on your experiences in your current position, what 3 improvements would you make? What would you do first, and why?
Boy, I'd have to think that one over. I guess on a personal, if you're asking me on a personal level what changes I would make, nay, a day has gone by in this job where I haven't learned something in the almost 15 years that I've been doing this now. It's been a learning experience the whole way. Some of the things that I've learned and working on improving, sometimes I take things to heart a little bit too much. That's certainly an area to improve on. Sort of striking a work-life balance, I think, is very important for anybody, especially in policing, not just me specifically. And I see plenty of guys who either, guys and girls, excuse me, who are either so vested in the job that they have no time for any other life, or are so flippant about the job that it really just seems like they don't care. So I think working to improve, somewhere landing in the middle, I think would be an important goal for me.
Lieutenant SoDo.
Yes, ma'am.
I think we're talking more about like in the police department.
In the department specifically, I think we're on the right track with a lot of things. I like the community relations board that we have here. I think continuing to improve our relationship with them certainly is a step in the right direction. I think policing has taken a hit over the years, and we're slowly but surely rebuilding that, and I think that's a step in the right direction. I think continuing our journey on improving staffing levels, certainly another area where we've taken a hit over the past few years, just based on the climate of policing. Certainly no one's to blame for that, but I think that we can't truly accomplish our mission that we have here in this city if we don't have an adequate number of staff, and I think for a very long time we've been pretty far behind. We've made some big strides to improve that, and I think we're moving in the right direction with that also. And I think finally one thing that I would improve maybe from a supervisor standpoint is more exposure to opportunities to grow as a leader. As the chief mentioned, I've been very blessed to attend the FBI Law Enforcement Executive Development Training Program. It's a 3-week program. It's broken down a week at a time. And when you complete that, you earn, they call it the Leadership Trilogy, because you've completed all 3 courses. And there's several of my counterparts who are also in the process of completing that. So I think some more opportunities to improve on leadership skills and sort of build that foundation a little bit better for police supervisors, I think, should be of utmost importance to us. And I apologize for misunderstanding
No,
the
it's
question
okay.
to
I
begin
mean,
with.
all that you said earlier is
still
good
good.
too. Yeah. What would be the first you would tackle?
Boy, that's a tough one. I suppose I guess a lot of that would go hand in hand. I think the staffing issues would help have us better prepared to have a new generation of leaders coming on board, which in turn would help us interact better with, outside stakeholders in the community that aren't necessarily privy to the inner workings of the department. I don't know that you could rank one of those to be, let's do this first and then let's do this second.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I think you're up, Captain.
What are the biggest challenges to policing currently, and how would you address them in your command?
Certainly, I guess there's no shortages of challenges facing policing. I think the biggest challenge facing us right now is getting all of the team members on board towards accomplishing our mission. And when I say team members, I don't just necessarily mean cops. I think that our goal of suppressing crime and reducing, public fear and that sort of stuff, we can't accomplish that unless everybody is bought into that goal. And by everybody, I mean the community, I mean political members, I mean members of the department. I think the biggest challenge is to sort of unify everybody to know that that's our mission and that's our goal. It's not our mission to go out there and suppress people's rights. It's not our mission to go out there and make a bad name for ourselves. It's our mission to improve the living experience for people that live and work here. And I don't think we can truly do that until we can get everybody bought into that goal.
One of the top priorities of the mayor's administration is to implement DEI strategies and best practices citywide. Please tell us what diversity, equity, and inclusion mean to you. How can you support this initiative within the police department?
Well, I think that certainly all of those have a place in the department. And I think in order to accomplish the mission that I spoke to Captain Fletcher, the department's got to be reflective of the community, right? It's got to be, at least in my opinion, people that live here, right? People that their kids go to school here, that people have some sort of stake in the community. When I worked at another agency many years ago, up in Northampton, there was like 1 out of 10 policemen that lived in Northampton. Everybody else was a transient, myself included. I wasn't from Northampton. And not to say that I didn't do my job well or that I didn't care about the community that I was involved in, but I think when you've got some kind of connection and you're reflective of the people that live here, the people that work here, and the people that raise their kids here, I think that carries a lot more of a carries a bigger stick, for lack of a better term, than just anybody willy-nilly who's interested in the job.
Another administrative priority the mayor has is to create a system of accountability and professional development, which includes implementing performance evaluations. If you were to take on this role, how would you evaluate individual officers and the department as a whole? Explain how you would go about creating a culture of accountability in the Holyoke Police Department.
Well, I think I'll address the performance part of that question first, if that's all right. I think any kind of effective performance evaluation in policing, at least in my opinion, can't be something that ranks how many arrests a policeman makes or how many tickets they give out. I don't think that's a measure of effectiveness. Now, certainly somebody that we hire to be a police officer that makes 0 arrests or writes 0 citations, that's a problem. But I don't think that an accurate snapshot of a police officer, at least in my opinion, is just somebody who goes out with, sort of a robot attitude and just arrests everybody and writes tickets to everybody and says, well, I'm gonna get a gold star on my performance because I made 1 million arrests. I don't think that's effective. I think in order to measure the true effectiveness of a police officer, especially in a city like Holyoke, it's got to be a snapshot of how they interact, what their sort of thinking outside of the box ideas are to solve issues where they work. Somebody that's willing to go the extra mile and say, hey, listen, I've worked, as an example, car 3 for 3 years now, and I noticed there's a problem with traffic on this street at this time every day. Here's what I came up with for an idea to try to solve it. I think that's far more effective than somebody who just says, well, there's a lot of traffic, so I'm going to sit there and write 1 million tickets, if that makes any sense at all. And to address the second part of your question, the sort of accountability and doing the right thing, for lack of a better term, I think that we got to police ourselves, if that makes any sense. I know there's a sort of a long time stigma in policing that we bury things and we have this sort of blue wall of silence, all of the terms that you've heard people use. But I think we've come a long way too, even in the past few years, of sort of being an open book. And I think in us policing ourselves and us showing the public that, hey, we're doing the right thing here. We take this seriously. We investigate complaints. We discipline. We do the right thing here. It's an open book. We don't sweep things under the rug. I think helps create that sort of atmosphere of accountability where people can have faith in us and people know that we're doing the right thing.
From your years of experience working at the Holyoke Police Department, what are some of the management workplace challenges, and how would you go about overcoming or solving those challenges?
I think one of the biggest challenges, and I wouldn't say that it's necessarily Holyoke specific, but seems to be a little bit more common here than anywhere else, is I think there's a disconnect between the political governing body of the city and the inner workings of the police department. And I think that a lot of people in Holyoke have their voices heard through local government. For example, city council members. I think here, more than anywhere else I've ever been, the city council is a great representation of what the city is like, and I think a lot of residents in the city don't have a problem approaching their counselor and saying, I'm having this sort of problem involving the police department, whatever, and the counselor speaks for them, which is fantastic, and you don't see a lot of places that do that. But I think where we fall short is a connection between the governing body, i.e. city council, and the police department, where I think if counselors and government officials had a little bit more of an opportunity to see how things truly are, or, on the other hand, what we can and can't do, I think it would go a long way to sort of bridge the gap and sort of erase some of the ignorance that surrounds policing and that sort of thing. There's a lot of cloudiness about how the police department functions, and again, what we can and can't do. And sometimes having a conversation and just saying the law doesn't allow us to do that sometimes can settle the issue. But I think sort of creating that sort of plan to bridge that gap would go a long way.
Thanks.
Okay, can you describe the relationship that should exist between the captain and those reporting to him or her? What experience do you have in leading a team of people?
Well, Chief, certainly I think my mantra is that a supervisor, a captain, any supervisor, I think should be viewed as a resource first before anything else. Certainly there is a time where a captain or a supervisor has to have a difficult conversation, has to enforce the rules, has to sort of exhibit strong leadership and say, this is the way we're going to do it. Don't ask me any questions. Let's get the mission done. But I think a majority of the time, a supervisor should be viewed as a resource and somebody that's approachable by people who work underneath him or her, and somebody that's approachable to sort of share their knowledge and answer questions and empower their subordinates to do their job. As far as my experience goes, before I was put in the position I am now, I was the commanding officer of the overnight shift for a little while. I was in charge of 22 or 23 police officers and 4 sergeants. Before that, I was a patrol sergeant for a while, both on the overnight shift and on the 4 to 12 shift. So I was on the street in charge of 8 or so police officers on patrol. And I've always tried to live by that sort of motto of being a resource rather than a sort of I'm here and you're there type attitude. That just doesn't do it for me.
Sorry. Can you give me a specific example of a time when you had to conform to a policy which you did not agree? And there might not be, right? Is that what you said, Mayor? There might not be.
It might not be one. Well,
Yeah, nothing.
And you
Nothing.
can't
comes
use your
to mind.
beard.
Nothing comes to mind.
beard policy.
That I strongly disagree with. I actually think, in working in two different departments, it sort of gives me a unique view, in that I think our policies and procedures here in Holyoke are leaps and bounds above other agencies, and I don't think you find a lot of the issues with conformity and that sort of thing here that you do in other departments. Just my opinion.
Give me an example of a time when you had to make a split-second decision.
There's been quite a few of them over my career, of course. One comes to mind that it was a very, very big learning experience for me. When I was a brand new sergeant, I was on duty in the police station. A person came into the lobby to complain about another police officer. And so I went out and I spoke to them, and they were complaining that they were at the mall, the Holyoke Mall, and somebody had stolen their cell phone or something, or they believed their phone had been stolen, and they flagged down the police officer who was working the mall detail. And that police officer told them, "I'm sorry, I can't help you. You'll have to go to the police station," which I didn't find to be acceptable. I thought it was them being lazy. And it really irked me. If I could be quite frank with you, it irked me that another police officer would say, "Sorry, I can't help you." That's just ridiculous. So I got pretty angry about that. I spoke to the officer via the phone, unloaded on them, and then fired off a very strongly worded email right after that, with no time to kind of take a deep breath and stuff. And I remember at the time it was Chief Febo, and Chief Febo called me at the desk and was like, "What's up with that email?" And I, "Chief, you'll never believe this." And I was going nuts on "Can you believe how lazy this cop was?" And I remember him saying to me, "Take a deep breath, man. Take a deep breath. Think about it before you send out an email like that. Those are the kind of things you want to take an hour or two and get a cup of coffee and then think about sending an email out after." And as time went on that night, boy, I certainly felt like a jerk later on. And I remember talking to the cop later and saying, "Hey, I'm sorry for going nuts. I should have got that cup of coffee before I made that instant decision." So that was definitely an experience for me.
Tell me about a time when you were able to successfully deal with another person, even when that individual may not have personally liked you, or vice versa. I think you just said it.
Yeah, can I just say see previous answer? There was a time when I was the lieutenant on the overnight. This is another time, because I had to sort of tip my hat to the officer afterwards. It was a new police officer who had only been there for a few months, and he was assigned to the lockup, the book prisoners, and somebody brought in an arrest. He had gone, we didn't have anybody before that, so I had allowed him to go out on the road on patrol. When that prisoner came in, we had called him on the radio to come in. Of course, he didn't answer. We tried calling him for quite some time, couldn't locate him. Make a long story short, the officer was located and he had fallen asleep. So he came into the police station. We had a talk. I definitely got my point across to that officer, and I told him that because of his conduct, he was going to be assigned inside for the foreseeable future. And I told him if he wanted to contest that, he could, but it would be in his best interest to just take his punishment and move on. And I will say that to the officer's credit, he did everything that I asked him to with a smile on his face, didn't complain once, and we all turned the page and moved on. And I'm not sure if that officer is a big fan of mine still to this day, but we accomplished, I think, what we needed to. The officer took his licking, and we moved on.
Tell me about a time when you were forced to make an unpopular decision.
I think, again, if I can go back to my time when I was in charge of the overnight shift, one of the responsibilities of the lieutenant in charge of the shift is to make the shift roster, to assign certain police officers to certain parts of the city. And certainly there's certain cars that are busier than others. Right? We call them cars. It's just different sectors. For instance, Car 5 covers primarily West Holyoke, so it's a little bit slower. But Car 1 covers the flats and part of South Holyoke, so it's a whole lot busier, just based on call volume. And so I believe that the fairest way to do it was to have each officer on the shift submit to me their top 3 choices for where they like to work, and then I would make the assignments based on seniority. And not everybody would always be the same, but primarily based on seniority, that's where they would work. And even though I thought that was the fairest way to do it, I heard a lot of complaints from a lot of junior officers who were constantly downtown saying, well, it's not fair, I should be Car 5, I want to be in the quiet area, I don't want to have to deal with calls every night. And it was sort of a constant talk where you had to have, where you say, your arm says Holyoke Police, and you're going to go where the calls are, not West Holyoke Police or Flats Police. It says Holyoke Police, and where you're assigned to go, that's part of the job. And unfortunately, if it's too much for you, I don't know what to tell you. No. Certainly, looking back on it now, probably was unpopular. I believed it was the fairest way to do it, but certainly, I guess what's fairest is not always most popular. Yes, ma'am.
Can you just, oh, wait a minute.
Yep, 12.
12. Can you describe your approach to developing and maintaining an effective chain of command?
Certainly the police department, I think functions best in sort of a paramilitary type setting. I think probably I wouldn't say that the department can't function without a chain of command, but I believe that it functions best with one. You see departments that struggle with maintaining a chain of command also struggle with determining who's in charge of what and who's the actual leader. In some places there's a chief, but the captain really kind of runs things behind the scenes, and people know that if they jump their sergeant and go to the captain, that they're going to get the answer that they're looking for, and it sort of just turns the whole organization on its head. And I don't think you can send people to as many leadership courses and trainings as you want, but if you don't have that sort of this person answers to this person who answers to this person, the organization doesn't really function all that well. You have people getting different answers from different people, and tasks being duplicated over and over again because a sergeant tells you to do one thing and then another sergeant tells you to do another. So I think without some sort of a concrete chain of command, the efficiency of the agency is really severely impaired.
How would you handle a situation where 2 members of the crew are in disagreement over how to complete a task?
I think having the first step, I think, should be having a sit down with both people and saying, listen, this is supposed to be an adult job, right? This is a career. We're supposed to be grown-ups here. Let's figure out what the heck's going on and let's get the job done. Especially if it's some kind of petty nonsense or something that people are arguing over. We're supposed to be better than that, right? We're supposed to do a better job than that. We're police officers. We carry a badge and a gun, and we have the right to end someone's life if we need to, right? Are we really going to argue over stupid stuff? Let's figure out what we need to do and let's get the job done. If one person's still as obstinate as they can be, then maybe they need to get taken off of whatever task it is and let somebody else handle it, and address that person individually if they're still not getting the message.
Okay, last one.
Yes, sir.
Describe the most rewarding experience of your career thus far.
Oh, boy. I don't know that I could put that into one thing, Chief. This job has been more than I ever could have hoped for. I wanted to be a cop my whole life. Never wanted to do anything different. The pros and good experiences far outweigh the cons and the negatives that I've had on this job, and the experience that I've had working here especially. I'm not a Holyoke native. I wasn't born and raised here, but I've lived here for about 12 or 13 years now, and been here for 9. And I don't know that I could tell you one rewarding thing, but each day, you know, when you come into the building and you're ready to work, everyone has their bad days, that's for sure. But there's never been a time where I've come in and said, boy, I hate this, or boy, what a terrible decision this has been.
All right, Lieutenant, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, was there anything that we didn't go over, or maybe you want to offer some words, or anything last minute you want to share?
No, sir, I don't believe so. Thank you all for your time today.
Thank you
Thank
so
you for
much,
having
and good luck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
He's the only one that didn't say the beard policy.
And there was only one without a beard.
I guess yeah, he was,
Hi, how are you?
welcome back. I should make the unpopular decision of bringing back the no beard policy. What do you think?
No. You would have at least 4 unhappy.
Make sure your microphone's on, George.
Oh yeah, can you press the green button?
Is it on?
Now it is.
Lieutenant George Monsalve, welcome.
Thank you, sir. Good
I
morning.
think you're the last candidate we're interviewing today. 5 candidates total to fill 2 open positions of captain. You've been through this process before, and you know the civil service guidelines here, right? We appoint based on the order of the results of the test scores of civil service. The mayor is the appointing authority. Unless there's a reason to bypass a candidate, we go down, we're supposed to be going down the order of that. But, you know, just like last time, we're taking non-traditional steps. We're having open interviews, mainly because, you know, we want the public to learn about the candidates that we're interviewing, understanding the process, first of all, but also learn about the candidates that we're interviewing to step on to these really important leadership roles that have tremendous amount of influence on the direction we go as a city as far as policing is concerned. We have here with me Kelly Kern, you know, our personnel director, and the chief, members of our Police Relations Advisory Committee, Colleen, Axel, former retired Captain Fletcher, and Kalana. Are 4 of the, how many members we got in Police Relations? 11, I think, maybe, 10, 11 people. We're gonna go around and ask you a few questions each. We're gonna rate the answers to your questions all individually, but, you know, I do let people know that it really has no weight, because the order is what takes priority. But nevertheless, it allows us to have a robust conversation about the candidate, how you answered these questions. And, you know, should you get an opportunity to serve this role, you know, obviously being able to sit down with your supervisor, the chief, and do some professional growth and development areas where we can improve and so forth. So with that being said, before we start, the chief's gonna do an introduction, but are you good?
Yes, I'm all
Comfortable there? Okay, no questions on the process?
No, I'm
anything?
good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so this candidate is Lieutenant George Monsalve. George has been with the department. He started with us as a dispatcher in 2001. In 2002, he became a reserve police officer. He was also appointed later in that same year as a full-time police officer, so 2002. He was assigned to patrol, as well as he did time in the Detective Bureau. and the Domestic Violence Unit. He was promoted to sergeant in 2016 and to lieutenant most recently in 2023. He is a commander at an overnight shift, midnight to 8. He has no disciplinary issues to speak of, and he has accommodation, a letter of proclamation from the mayor, and 5 letters of appreciation. He has a bachelor's and associate's degree in criminal justice. He has attended the leadership trilogy, and he has completed it. He was a sexual assault investigator, and he also did the LEADA Public Affairs Officer certification.
Thanks, Chief. Axel, I think you're kicking us off.
Please tell us a little bit about yourself. What qualifications, experience do you have that will make you successful in this career?
Thank you. Basically about myself, a personal life, I was born in Colombia in South America. I came here when I was 10 years old. Grew up in the city of Holyoke, stayed in the city of Holyoke, still live in the city of Holyoke, and love the city of Holyoke. Go Holyoke. I went through the Holyoke schools. I graduated Holyoke High back in 1994. From there, I went on to the military part-time to help me pay for school. So I did basic training for the Army, came back from that, and joined college to get a criminal justice degree. After that, I joined the police department initially as a dispatcher. Kind of got used to everyone within the department and the way the department works. Shortly thereafter, I was fortunate to be hired as a full-time police officer, remained in that role for over 12 years. Went into the detective bureau. There, I was voluntold to be in charge of the domestic violence unit. That was not something that I initially was seeking to do, but it became one of my most fulfilling roles that I've had within the police department. Took several promotional exams, and I was fortunate to be promoted to sergeant after a couple of years. I spent some time in the sergeant ranks, just learning how to be a boss. You become a police officer, you take a test, and then you get promoted, but there is no really book or guidelines or anything. One day you wake up and you're going to run a car. The next day you wake up and you're being the boss. So I had to figure that out. I was fortunate. I did that for about 7 years. I was fortunate to work in all 3 shifts. Day shift, 4 to midnight, and midnights. Each shift has their own different challenges, their own different personalities, both within the department with the officers and out with the public. After that, I just stayed in that role. Took a promotional exam to lieutenant a couple of years ago. Went through this process with the mayor. Finally, my number came up. I was recently promoted to lieutenant. Took the captain's exam. I like to, continue to grow, continue to stay here within the department. I was fortunate enough to pass that test, and here I am. Thank you.
Based on your experience and your current position, what three improvements would you make? What would you do first, and why?
Thank you, Captain. Improvements that we need to get the tools that our officers need. Now, that might not be something that I might have a direct say in, but being able to provide what I can for those officers, the tools that they need. Also, being a positive role model for them, having a positive attitude on a daily basis, just to help with our staffing and retention. If officers see you coming in as the boss, down in the slumps or with a poor attitude, that permeates through the whole entire department, and they're going to gain that attitude also. So you want to come in with a positive, let's do this type of attitude, go team. So that's 2, 3, I think that was 2, that was 3.
2.
2. I think that staffing and retention, I'm gonna call that 2. And then that's our biggest goal. We have brand-new officers who culturally and generationally are not as us Gen X, and they don't see policing as a career. They almost see it sometimes as a job, and to be able to bridge that gap, be a positive model, role model, and teach them how rewarding it is to be a police officer, and to teach them to want to stay in this for the long haul and not listen to negative messages and just be there and be a part of our team.
Thank you.
Thank you, Captain.
What are the biggest challenges to policing currently, and how would you address them in your command?
I think the biggest challenges is one that we've had since 2020, since all the changes that have happened because of that unfortunate incident in Minneapolis. We need to continue. We've done a good job to communicate with the public, to get that public relations and get that message out there. The police are not bad. The police are here to help. Because of that message that was started back then, we've had the issues with the staffing. We had the issue with the retention. If we just communicate with the public, if we can build the trust and understanding of what our role is within the community, and not so much just as authoritarian and being out there saying you're going to do what I tell you to do, but being a partner instead, I think that would help a lot with the misunderstanding, misguidance that it's happening out there, and that would also help with maybe more people wanting to join this profession. Thank you.
So one of the top priorities of the mayor's administration is to implement diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies and best practices citywide. Please tell us what DEI means to you, and how can you support this initiative within the police department?
Okay, diversity. The Holyoke Police Department is one of the most diverse police departments that I know. We have everything in that police department. Latinos, Caucasian, females, African American, everything is there. So I think our police department is very reflective of the community that we serve. Equality, that's just simple, treating people not within the department as equals, as human beings, and out in the public just the same, giving people the respect that they need, giving them an open ear and opportunity and the ability to express their concerns, and treating them as equals, not to use the word. Integrity, no, what was the third one? Inclusiveness. We have to get all our partners involved in our department. And when I say partners, our school department, our social justice people out there, our nurses, everyone in the city of Holyoke, our administration. We need to collaborate with each other to be able to come up with resolutions to problems and to better come up with a way where the police department can function in a way that everybody can live together and understand what each other's roles are. Thank you.
Another administrative priority that the mayor has
Sir?
is to create a system of accountability and professional development, which includes implementing performance evaluations. If you were to take on this role of captain, how would you evaluate individual officers and the department as a whole? Explain how you'll go about creating a culture of accountability at the police department.
I think before you can hold anybody accountable for any action, you need to communicate what your goals are, what your expectations are. So I guess my first step would be to communicate what it is that is expected, and what the goals are and what our mission is and what we're trying to accomplish. After that, how I would go about making that happen. As a captain, you're more of an administrator. I would team up with my lieutenants and other supervisors, get them all on board as to what the mission is of the department, get them all to understand. And then once the upper ranks can understand and have the ability to know where we're heading and where we want to go, then we can kind of, as a team, pass that along to the troops and everybody out below there. Do evaluations, not simply on numbers, not simply on stats, meaning how many arrests you've had or how many tickets you've written or anything to that sort, but how many positive relations you've had with the public. I forget which department there was, but I remember them giving out, every time they had an interaction with the public, they would give out like a little piece of paper that was like a survey. They didn't have to give who their name were, but just basically what the type of interaction was, how the officer behaved. Yeah, so it was somewhat anonymous, but I know that has been done before, and that can give the public an ability to help judge, and you can use that as a matrix to also with stats and performance to evaluate your officers.
Thank you.
From your years of experience working in the Holyoke Police Department, what are some of the management or workplace challenges, and how would you go about overcoming these challenges?
Policing has changed a lot. Policing is a paramilitary organization. Some of the challenges is before, if you were given a directive or if you were given a task, you would do that task. Nowadays, there's always, everything's followed with the why. And that is actually a good thing because you can take that opportunity to convey to the person asking what the message is and why the purpose is of what you're being asked to do. So it's taking them more from a, again, authoritative model of leadership to a more inclusive and participatory way of everybody understanding what we're trying to accomplish and how we're accomplishing it.
Describe the relationship that should exist between the captain and those reporting to him or her. What experience do you have in leading a team of people?
I think a captain should be completely open-minded and accessible to their people. There's definitely that chain of command, and you're going to hear from your other lieutenants, and you should use those lieutenants to do some of your legwork for you. So at that level, at the administrative level, at the captain level, you can be more of a mentor, facilitator, and not so much of a dictator. Help the lieutenants run the shifts, try to provide what they need, and just be a resource for your command staff.
Give me a specific example of a time when you had to conform to a policy with which you did not agree.
No, just kidding. No, policies and procedures. No, again, as I mentioned, I came from the military, so and I am a little bit older. So I come from the mentality of you tell me to do something and I just go ahead and do it. I really don't question authority. That has changed, and we've learned to change with it. So I don't think there is really any policy that has an issue. Policies and procedures and rules are created to be able to run a police department properly for the public to understand what it is that we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And like anything, like the law, policies change. So it's just a matter of being able to take the time and evaluate if something needs to change it. And if it doesn't, then that's the way it needs to be done, and that's what needs to happen. Sure.
Okay, give me an example of a time when you had to make a split second decision.
The second decision.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. I feel like as police officers, we do that on a regular basis. On a personal level, I remember a day where one of my female officers went from one scene of a domestic violence scene, and then from there went directly to a sudden death, a person who had passed away unexpectedly. And that roller coaster of emotions, it can be a toll for police officers. For many years, we didn't really talk about that. That's something that's been really new, that's been needed in our profession. We've lost a lot of police officers, not on the line of duty, but by their own hands, because nobody really understood that. So that split-second decision of taking the time to pull that officer aside, having a conversation with her, and getting her to either vent if that's what she wanted to do, or whatever, just being that open ear for her was, I think it was one of those key moments that could have very easily been lost or sent to waste. Thank you, Captain.
Tell me about a time you were able to successfully deal with another person, even when that individual may not have personally liked you, or vice versa.
Within the department, the higher you go, I feel that you have a bit of difference of opinions, more difference of opinions, because your role is to guide people in the direction that you want the department to go. And with 100 and plus officers that we have, everybody has difference of opinions. As long as you treat everyone with respect, you give them an opportunity to communicate their grievances, you let them know that those grievances will be heard, and at the end of the day, whatever that decision is, whether it's favorable or not, communicate that decision and give them the why. Again, nowadays the why is so important. I think even then, if you do all of those things and you still don't agree with that person, there's a mutual respect, there's a mutual understanding, and situations can be resolved. That translates the same on the street. The way you treat people on the street, it's exactly the same way that you treat people in the department. I lived here in the city of Holyoke. I go to the Holyoke restaurants. I go to fitness facilities. I go to the mall. I see people that I deal with either negatively or positive in the city, and the ability to cohabitate with the whole city and not have an issue based on the way I've behaved with them, it's huge. Thank you.
Tell me about a time when you were forced to make an unpopular decision.
Every day. Every day you make unpopular decisions. It can be as simple as somebody asking me for a day off, and I can't give it to them as much as I want to because of contractual obligations or staffing levels or such. So every day you have to make those decisions, whether it be that, or whether it be enforcing a rule or regulation or policy from the department. But if you take the time to communicate why it is that you are taking this decision, then maybe the person will realize that, yes, it might not be what you want, but just there might be an understanding, and it might be more acceptable. Thank you.
Describe your approach to developing and maintaining an effective chain of command.
I think I touched upon this a little bit on one of the earlier questions. I think first, excuse me, First, you need to be clear about the goals that you want to set. You need to communicate where it is that we're going, what it is that we are trying to accomplish. Once you have that mission and goal set in stone, or at very least figured out, then I would go to my lower chain of command, get them to buy in on the whole process. Once we can kind of have a discussion with the command staff, then we can try to make that change and implement that change throughout the ranks and throughout the department.
Thank you.
How would you handle a situation where two members are in a disagreement on how to complete a task?
I think we do that on a regular basis, not only within the department, but we do that on the street as a call for service. You have to look at all sides of the coin, bring in the two employees together, separately first, hear each side of the story, try to figure out where the disagreement came to be, whether it was a misunderstanding or misinformation. Most issues, if you just give a little bit of information or give them that why, can be resolved. See if it rises to the level that is something that we can address within, the lower command structure. Try to provide the opportunity to be a mediator if that's something that they want to do. And depending on the severity of the incident, it might be necessary to make determination that something has to go higher to a discipline or such. But first of all, try to see if things can be resolved by a simple conversation and some communication and understanding of the other person's point of view.
Okay, the last question. Describe the most rewarding experience of your career thus far.
I think the ability to serve. I'm constantly helping. I think I like to help. So in general, being having the ability to be a police officer is extremely rewarding to me. You weren't here, I don't think, for our previous interview, but I never really thought that I was going to get the opportunity to be a police officer. So the fact that I'm sitting here interviewing for a captain, which is right below the chief, the higher end of the command structure, that's absolutely rewarding to me. Also, I'm also pleased to know that regardless of what happens, we have a little group chat between all the candidates that are here and everybody that's kind of in the upper rank. And we were, even though we were competing with each other, we were all like the night before the test sending, hey, good luck, get some good sleep, try to eat something, just relax, kind of our own little cheerleader. So the fact that we're all working together, that's huge. We're not really fighting with each other, which is going to be huge for the police department. We're gonna work together. So that's one of the benefits, is the fact that I've been able to serve, and I'm going to be able to serve with a great team.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Lieutenant, those are all the questions. Do you have any questions for us? Anything we didn't cover that you want to share with us?
I'm all set. It looks like the chief is ready to go.
Chief's got to rock and roll. He's got an appointment to go to.
Thank you all for the opportunity. This is awesome, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone. Captain, everyone, thank you so much. M as in Mary, O, N as in Nancy, S, A.
George. So that concludes that. Yeah, and we can keep recording and just kind of have an open conversation for now. So those were 5 candidates that we've interviewed to fill 2 open positions for captain. And just so that folks know, right, if we didn't do this, the normal thing would, the names get presented to the mayor. The mayor would meet with the candidate one-on-one. Again, if there's no reason to bypass a candidate, we'd be appointing the first two. The order that we've interviewed is the order of rank in the civil service exam. The results, the highest test scores. And that would be that, right? A lot of people don't. Here we did it openly, we did it publicly, we're sharing. And no different, right? Like, although there hasn't been any reason to bypass a candidate, you know that the first two are going to be the ones we'll have to appoint. And just so that folks don't, for people that don't know, the fire department, they have a 3-member civilian commission board that has executive authority, and they do together, because it's a 3-member board, they have to follow open meeting law, and they do they're just like the mayor appoints everybody in the police department. The 3-member civilian board does all the appointing and the promotions at the fire department. They follow this same, very similar process, and they have to share their rankings and vote and do their vote accordingly of who the appointing is going to be. But same process, civil service, you got to go through through that. But so it's clear. I'm assuming, unless if you have any questions, let me know. But understand, the first two candidates are going to be the ones that will get appointed. But besides that, I'm more interested in learning what some of your perspectives are, the candidates, how well they do, strengths, areas we need to improve with some of the candidates. The first two that are going to be serving in this important role, some plus deltas maybe, that we can potentially bring back to those candidates and say, hey, they're going to see this at home, I'm sure, and get kind of like that constructive feedback.
I think they're all amazing.
Make sure your mic's on.
Oh, it's on. Sorry. I just thought they were all amazing. Being in the healthcare as a night shift worker, you can see the difference of where some only manage maybe 20 guys versus, and it's not as busy and there's not as many meetings or things going on. So, like, they seem like their answers were less involved, but I think it's because of the shift they work. Just because I've always worked nights, I can relate to people who work nights. You don't have the, you just don't have the meetings and other things that, so some people that work days or evenings sound really busy, and it sounded like, they're doing a lot, but I think it's because of the shift work. I liked one person, he said that, I think merit was important, and I found that kind of a good thing, because you don't hear a lot about merit anymore. But all 5 were fabulous candidates. I mean, we'd be lucky to have, I think, any of them. That's it.
Axel? Captain?
Well, 4 of the people that were here all work for me. But I told the mayor when I first got on the committee, I says, there's a lot of talent in the Holyoke Police Department. And you just saw it. And the last guy to the first guy. And the last guy, he worked, George, he worked as a dispatcher and on a day shift. And, I think when I came out of the men's room, he was shocked to see me here, because I don't really, I work at the police department, but I don't work downstairs. I work upstairs. The only time I go downstairs is when I run out of ink for the printer. But there's a lot of talent. You saw it today, and they were, and it hit on the most important points too. Training, education. They're all of, even the former dispatchers, high-level training. And that's an asset to the community.
Absolutely. Those were the notes I was taking. We have some work on communication, staffing, and retention.
Unbelievable.
And training, for sure. That was the theme all of them shared.
Yeah, and policing is, taking a real big hit. And the most important thing now is trying to fill the positions at the entry level,
Right.
and then trying to maintain them. They all have that thoughts, and they go by that guidance. And I thought that was impressive.
Thank you, Captain. Kalana?
I always enjoy that everyone comes very put together, very professional, even though the last one that we interview knows that you know, chances are they're not going to get the first two positions. So I just enjoy the amount of respect and professionalism they put towards interviewing for something that they know is already in the bag for someone else. So it's always very eye-opening. And I think it goes to show their character. So I always think it's just a plus for the police department to have that in them.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
But if someone else retires, I think they could slide in.
Yeah,
Right,
they
the
could.
list is good for 2 years, so.
Yeah, so I know that, but it's
But
still,
it is- yeah.
especially since you just implemented this not so long ago. So this is not something they do regularly. It's not something that's been in practice. It's something that's very new to them here. So it's just nice.
Back to Axel. You any comments?
I thought they were all exceptional, and I echo that as well, that they all came professional, and they stood professional throughout the whole, all the questions. I liked the last gentleman that he mentioned. They had a group chat, and they were cheering each other on. I think that shows collaboration, and also, you know, they were having a healthy competition, and that's great as well. I myself am happy for the opportunity because, you know, I've learned some new things here today as well, and just to be able to be helpful going forward. But they were all great. I think they all are great candidates.
Thanks, Axel. Lana.
You know that was true because one of the other officers said the same thing, that they were all rooting for each other no matter who got it.
Yeah.
They were all happy with whoever was interviewing.
Can I say one more thing?
Go ahead.
No, I love their commitment to police work and to the community, and how I think all of them live in the community, and just their, you know, just to be a better department, and to just be out there in the community doing positive, being positive role models, especially for the young generation. So that was just super good to see.
Kelly?
Yeah, I echo just what everyone said, but I did want to quote Lieutenant Monfett, who said, "Nobody cares how much I know until they know how much I care." And so that was like, that touched me, and I thought that was awesome. And I think they all have the same kind of values. It showed through their answers, and I think they'll be great leaders.
A lot of the comments you guys shared, and I appreciate that, because again, these folks are going to be stepping into captain roles where they are overseeing the implementation of day-to-day admin expectations. And there were recurring themes, and it was relieving to see that they were on the same page as far as what needs to be done within the department. You know, obviously the three recurring themes, the retention and staffing, training, and improving communication. What I learned, the disconnect in communication between shifts, and then the improving communication, internal, external, police department and stakeholders. Certainly things that I want to work on for sure, and it's good to know that these folks we've interviewed today, the first two who are stepping in, understand that that's what needs to happen, and that needs to be direction. The one thing, I know when we talked about DEI, they all had very similar answers, and it's great. I think, we all agree, and they all agree that, treating each other the same, making sure internal operations is reflective of the community. We're talking about all sorts of different demographics. But the thing with DEI is about understanding our own internal biases and how we can recognize that and make adjustments in areas that offer opportunities to build up and support each other. So there's so much more to it. And, I think there's some, I don't know about how you took it, Kelly, but I feel like there's some opportunity there that we need to work on to learn more on what DEI actually is. And it's not just about.
They were safe answers.
They were safe answers. So I think there's some DEI work we need to do, and that's okay. That's not a terrible thing or a great thing. It's just something, we'll work on. But certainly the recruitment, those are things we talk about when we meet at the advisory committee level. The first thing we talk about all the time is staffing. Where are we with staffing? What are the challenges? And how do we get to where we need to be? So you guys have learned a lot as an advisory group on issues around that. But again, I think that, as we heard from some candidates, there's ways we can be creative to be more attractive, to be a place where people want to work and grow their careers. Training, we're working on budget for FY25. We got to do something there. Sounds like we really need to step up our game on how we offer support in the department around training. And it's not that there's no training going on. The chief was here, he can explain to you from A to Z everything that they do, but it's, climbing Mount Everest in your shorts and t-shirts, as he likes to say. So how we can close some of those deficiencies there. And communication, obviously important in any relationship is making sure that we have a good communication ground game. And that just doesn't mean sharing things on social media. It means, how do you communicate with the different stakeholders, city council, the public, between personnel and leadership, between shifts, apparently.
Well, I'd like to address that, since you mentioned
Yeah.
shifts. And you heard two people speak about
Is your mic
the
on?
midnight.
Make sure your
It's
mic's
on.
on.
The midnight shift, lack of communication. One of the reasons there's a lack of communication is all the other departments are closed. The drug unit's gone, the detective unit's gone. So you're everything, on that shift. And sometimes things do get missed. So that's the problem, but it was always a problem. Not just now with in their cycle, but in my cycle when I was in charge of that shift. So I had to stay over, onto the day shift to tell the chief or to tell my superiors what went on, and why it went on, and why we're able to do this, we're able to do that, and so that could be fixed, and I think this chief, he's not here now, so I can say it. I think that he's addressing that. He's going to put a captain on every shift, and that would probably help really immensely with that communication problem. That will be almost non-existent, I think. And whenever all the other departments are closed. So,
Well, the communication and as well as the accountability too. 'Cause I remember
absolutely.
the chief did mentioning there isn't a captain working the midnight shift. Well, there was temporarily. We had Captain Reyes, but before that, for a while, we didn't have a captain working the midnight shift. But having that person there will help, I think, to your point with communication, but also one of the candidates talked about working the midnight shift and not knowing what the directive was or the expectation, right? So with the person in charge of they are present, the captain, you can then execute the directives and those orders and hold people accountable to those orders and making sure that people are doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Well, I worked on that shift, and I was a sergeant, and I had a captain. His name was McMullen, and he trained you to the books. I want the books done this way. I want this done this way. This done that way, and there's accountability. And he trained us well, Sergeant Paquette, who became Chief Paquette. We were trained by that captain, how to run the shift, the midnight shift, when he wasn't there, and when the lieutenant wasn't there. So that's important, I think. I think you'll see an improvement there with that change.
Any other comments? Well, thank you, everybody, for your time and your support that you've offered through this whole thing, and not just this, but also participating in the police relations monthly meetings. And that concludes that for now, and see you at the next meeting. We should be.